Hey, yo, welcome to Insert Name. Since this is the first time I'm doing an interview, I haven't decided yet what I'll call this. I'm certain I'll call it something different over the next few interviews I do. But without a doubt, I have probably one of my favorite SteemIt users out there with me today, and that is Bethla. Welcome, Bethla.
Thanks.
Uh,
What's up, JP?
so, Beth, knocking out of the way, let's just allow you to do a little bit of plugging around because you have been so gracious to allow yourself to be my first guest on I guess it's a show, or my first guest on my interviews. So, what would you like to plug first?
Well, you know who I'd like to plug. I am all about the SPL, the Steam Poker League on the SteemIt blockchain. Um, yeah, we play poker and we bullshit a lot, so it's a lot of fun. Anybody who likes either one of those things would be welcome to come and check us out.
Yeah, the best part about it is the plenty of opportunities to free roll. You're not going to
Mm-hmm.
find that anywhere else in the crypto space. And it's really hard to find free rolls outside of the crypto space. So definitely major shout outs to Tuck, who is the founder and helps significantly run it. Pays for it out of pocket through his blog. So he's been doing this for how long would you say? Probably more than a year.
It's almost a year. Yeah, we just
Yeah.
came up. Did you see our thousandth? Whoa, our thousandth member post.
No, I did not.
Yeah, it's we're running all of the posts now through the SPL blog. I'm sorry, I'm getting a trail or something just hit me. Can you hear the beeping?
Yeah, I
Anyway,
can hear you.
I'm sorry. Very popular. Anyway, yeah, so we're running it through the SPL blog. So check it out because I believe. Let me see if I can find it real quick. So um, I want to say it's June was the first post about the SPL. So it's almost
Okay.
a year. Yeah.
So we're walking up on a full year of amazing poker tournaments. We've gone through thick and thin. And so definitely I'll post a link towards both the website itself and the blog link, and then also the you said thousandth member.
Yeah, thousandth member. So I'm gonna drop you this link to this post because yeah, it's June 16th, which was our first post. The first post that Tuck wrote about the SPL was on June 16th
Uh,
last year. And I think it's important for everybody to understand that you don't pay for this. So JP's talking about free rolls, and that means the poker tournament is free. You don't need to pay anything to get in. We do have ring games and stuff, but there's never, you cannot put SPDs or fiat, you can't put money on the Luxac site. So it's never like, I don't know. I've been in a couple of different places where people were worried they were gonna like get addicted and start using all their money. There's just no way that you can. Anything that you
exactly,
earn
and that's
right
very
through
complicit
playing,
with regulations as well,
yeah, it's legal. And so in order for it to be
because
legal, it
for
has to
U.S.
be.
customers, poker had essentially been classified harshly illegal for many people, and many websites, and it just slammed down with all sorts of regulations, which is why here at SPL you don't even have to worry about any of that. We're down with the business.
Yeah, definitely want to be legal and none of that nonsense about, well, you chose to play and so therefore we're not liable. Bullshit. Everything's above board and
Exactly. And we don't have to worry about any of that because all of it
Yeah.
is free to play.
Free to play. Yay.
Now, what's the next thing you want to put a plug in?
Well, my partner in crime, Nick Noss, and I do the community casino thing. So, like, for instance, I just finished a game. I do blackjack, and Nick is doing. Um,
Yeah, I saw that.
he's
I didn't win.
Nick's got Hold'em and Omaha High Low. And those are easy. They just are played on, through his post, so you don't even have to go anyplace else. But those are always fun.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun because it's just three or four posts in that week where you
Right.
start up. You have the sign up post, then the flop post, then one more post, and then the win post. And you
Yeah.
just make sure you like the post, make sure you comment on it, whether or not you want to call, and just have fun and play your chances with what's that yet another free opportunity to win Steam. And
That's right.
if you can't tell, we love free stuff here. We love giving free stuff.
Free stuff is fun. I'm all about having fun. That's what this my whole journey here is about. So I honestly, when we came up with the idea of how to do these games, the hold'em and the blackjack through our posts, I really didn't. I don't know. It sounded a little lame, but it's way more fun than I thought it was going to be. So it's cool, and that's all through Community Casino, and that's Nick and I's like
Yeah, and
expertise.
I'll be sure to also drop the Discord link for Community Casino in the
Cool.
description so that people will be able to join that.
Totally. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then anything else you want to plug?
No, I keep thinking of this awful meme somebody sent me. It's disgusting, and you keep saying plug. And anyway, no, I don't. I don't want to plug anything else. Thank you.
Alrighty. Then let's get right into it. Talk a little bit about yourself.
Well, my SteemIt name is Bethalea, like Princess Leia, only with Betha instead of Princess. So I'm also coming up on a year that I've been here. Actually, that's funny. I just realized that. Um, I'm a mom of four. I'm really not that interesting in my real life. I do all those things, but
Oh,
I
I
don't.
would disagree. You've got a very interesting job, and you've written a few blogs about some of the things that you've done in your jobs, or at least some of the topics. I remember reading your blogs about the what is it called? The air, the stuff that comes out of the planes.
Oh, the chemtrails.
There
Yeah,
you go, the
yeah,
chemtrails.
yeah. That's something new to me. So I was sitting on the poker table talking about it with Tuck actually, and I had a friend who had been. I don't know. It was so odd because she would be like, "Oh, they're spraying the skies above my house," and then she would just be depreciated and like, "Oh, I know you don't believe any of that or anything," and I didn't know what she was talking about, and it didn't. I don't know. It didn't phase me. But then I started talking to Tuck about it, and he's all, "Oh, no, no, that's some real stuff up there." And so I started doing research on it, and yeah, it's pretty. The whole conspiracy kind of genre is new to me, and I am fascinated by the whole thing. And I think it's silly. Not, I mean, a lot of people don't agree that these trails up in the sky are something anything more than condensation and contrails. But I don't know, the amount of emotion and the no, there's nothing to see up there that I've heard and witnessed only makes me think that there's something more just to see, to talk about. You know what I mean? When somebody gets super emotional and vehement about how wrong I am when all I really have is an opinion and a quest, a desire to learn more. That sends up flags. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, so that's been a really interesting journey for sure. And yeah, you're right. My job is pretty cool, actually. I work for a nonprofit in Los Angeles. Um, it's a youth development program that serves under resourced girls in Los Angeles. So in the middle of LA, we have a couple of acre farm with like an organic garden and 16 horses and chickens and rabbits and a sheep. And so the girls from the city they come and they learn. We have a couple of different programs. One's called Seed to Skillet, so they plant, harvest, and cook their food. And I don't know, I don't know where anybody else lives, but here in LA, there is not a lot of that going on. So we teach them that, and then we have a whole equine program. So everything from hippology, which is the science of horses, so their anatomy, their nutrition, behavior, all of that. They do a lot of science um, studying, and then all the way to grooming and riding. We have right now. There's one girl at least who has been offered travel and scholarships to different places because of her not only writing but judging prowess. She's kind of amazing, and she's gonna go. She's this is a girl who grew up in a one bedroom apartment in downtown LA. She takes the bus to get to where we are over an hour each day. Sometimes it's close to 2 hours, and she comes and has since she was in sixth grade. It's kind of amazing. So anyway, she's now she went to a magnet high school and she's getting um, offers from all the big schools in the area, USC, UCLA,
That's awesome.
Davis. Yeah, in
Definitely sounds like
science.
someone that's highly motivated, highly dedicated, very much
Yeah,
highly dedicated, and obviously highly motivation. If you're highly motivated and if you're dedicated to succeeding, that's an example of obtaining your goals through your own
absolutely.
motivation.
Yep, hard work. So she was introduced to the program in sixth grade. What we do is we contract with different schools in Los Angeles. And part of what I do 3 times a week is I take our van and I go pick these girls up from their high schools. And they come and they have a couple of hour program on our property, and then we take them back. So this girl, her name is Danielle, she started in that program and really saw, like, loved it and saw opportunity. And so she started getting herself on the bus every weekend and coming over. So it's pretty cool.
That is really awesome.
Yeah. So I do like that. Thank you for reminding me.
Now, how did you find SteemIt? You said you're coming up on your first year, so let's take travel back in time and tell your SteemIt story.
Okay, so um I'm looking at my blog right now and I joined in May, so it's close. But last May I was at the tail end. This is gonna just totally dox me for being the lame fucking mom that I am. But anyway, last May I was at the very end of a 3-year um trip as PTA president for my kids' elementary school. And I you're not supposed to be PTA president for that long, but the person before me kind of left all of a sudden, so I had to take over, and then I did my own, and then nobody was anyway. It was unbelievably stressful, and talk about thankless. Oh my god, it was really really hard. Um, and so nearing the end, my husband and I were talking, and we realized that I just needed a break. I needed not to volunteer for things. I needed not to be in charge of anything. I needed to really take a minute and figure out again what I like to do, because I was so burnt out, JP. I didn't like anything. I have always loved to read, for instance, and I couldn't pick up a book. I was just everything. I don't know. Everything had changed, and I couldn't find any joy in anything. So my husband had been, let's see, in the beginning of last year, he was really interested in permaculture. And so he had been researching permaculture gardens and forests and all this kind of really interesting, kind of off the grid stuff. And somehow that path led him to crypto. And once he was in crypto, then of course he found SteemIt. Now, I was tired of PTA. I was tired of momming. I was tired of listening to him have these passionate projects that he was into. So he came up with SteemIt, and I had a blog in the past, 100 years ago. And I'd always kind of thought of myself as being a writer. So suddenly he finds this cryptocurrency thing coupled with writing and social media, which I was also into, Facebook and all that stuff. Then he goes, "Oh my God, honey, you're gonna love this." And I was so tired at the time. I was like, "Fuck you! I don't want to hear anything. I want to find something my own self." You know what I mean? And so him presenting it to me really just it was not a I was not very I was not very receptive or interested at all, but he signed me up anyway, the son of a bitch. And so then I had an account, and I don't know if you've ever seen my intro post, but oh God, I was just mad. I was like, he's like forcing me to do this thing. You know what I mean? Oh, dude. And then he comes to me one day and he goes, "Babe, they've got poker." And I was like, "Wait a minute. I like poker." So honest to God, that's how I got hooked into SteemIt. If it hadn't been for the SPL and Tuck and all you guys, like I don't think I would have done a bloody thing on this platform. Because it just wasn't, it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't appeal to me at first. Of course I've changed.
Yeah,
I've
now
changed
you
a
love
little
Steam
bit.
It. Now you're as much of a Steam It addict as any of the rest of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so then for a little while, man, I was ignoring my children. Like I was like, I got people to talk to and games to play, and so yeah, that's how that worked out.
So really the story I heard from that summarized is you went from not wanting to manage or run anything to managing and running SPL. Or at least helping manage and run SPL.
And therein lies the rub, right? Like, how the hell? It's all I wanted to do was play, and I don't know what happened. Like, I went completely. I have no idea why, and I'm not even like. There's not. I'm not official. It's not like I had some sort of actual title or position. I just happened to be friends with Tuck, and I don't know, dude.
And the bellowing, motherly, uh, attributive qualities just
I guess I'm just the
shine through.
boss. I
Mm-hmm.
just come on, and then I'm in charge. I don't know what the hell happened. But it's
uh,
fun. So that's all that matters. That's why I always say that. Like that's why it's really my position here on SteamIt and in the SPL is to make sure that everybody can have as much fun as possible. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned really enjoying books. What kind of books do you like?
Oh man. Uh Fiction is my main jam. I'm not really a big nonfiction writer or reader, although I like biographies and that kind of thing. Anything with a good story. I found a couple of different really good um, fiction writers on SteamIt, which has been fun. Is fun now, but I like everything. Like Stephen King, honestly, is probably my favorite author. I think he's just brilliant and beautiful. Um, but I read everything, or I did at one point. So I'm trying to get back into it because it really is something I enjoy.
Have you ever read anything by G.K. Chesterton?
I don't believe so.
That is my favorite author. I definitely would highly suggest it. I would start off with probably Man Who Is Thursday, a really
Oh,
good
cool.
book. He writes with a lot of sort of religious symbolism.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
yeah, but it's very much mystery, slightly
Yeah.
mystery, slightly some of his books are more thriller, and
Oh, good.
and it's definitely a really interesting read. I don't want to speak too much on it, otherwise I'm just gonna drop spoilers. So
Don't do that.
I'll just leave it at that. Definitely, I would suggest reading G.K. Chesterton. The Man Who Is Thursday is really good, and Man Alive is my favorite book by him.
Oh,
Uh,
sweet.
so I would add those two to your reading list at some point.
Done. In. It sounds that's perfect. I love mysteries, and I mean it's just fun getting a good escape.
Coming back to Steam a little bit, what have, aside from SPL, which you've mentioned in Community Casino, what sort of communities have you joined or find your favorite communities on SteemIt?
My other favorite communities on SteamIt.
Yes.
Well, I'm also a part of the Build a Whale community. The Marky Mark and Nick Noss are two of my best friends on the platform. So that's pretty cool. It's not, I guess, Build a Whale itself isn't a community like SPL is, but those are really good guys.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Marky Mark is amazing. He's
yeah,
done so much for the platform, and I have him as one of my witness votes. I definitely support a lot of the
absolutely.
things he pushes forward, and a lot of the thing, and a lot of his vision for SteamIt. And definitely, there's been different actions he's done on SteamIt that I think overall are very positive. So.
Yeah, I have to absolutely agree. Um, he he's a good person, and his intent is good. And then on top of that, he sees the needs that this platform has and is trying his best to address the situation instead of doing and so I'm not judging. People want to make money and they want to do their thing. I get it. But however, you have to admire someone like the Marky Mark who works so tirelessly to improve the situation, not
Mm-hmm.
just profit off of it.
And one
But
thing I definitely have to say about him is his approach, which I highly respect, is trying to find a mediator. He typically tries to be a
yeah,
mediator and tries to find a middle ground for individuals. Uh,
totally.
so definitely one of the things that really caught a lot of my respect for him was when he mediated flag wars between Randa Will slash Bernie and
Right.
Hagen. And so I definitely thought that, even though unfortunately it kind of fell apart a few weeks later, definitely his, like, the work that he did into that was definitely strong in my eyes, and I definitely like that a
Absolutely.
lot.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's a good man. When you find good people, you just know, and he's a good person. He's just and poor guy. He works really hard. So, there's the Build a Whale, which right. So I dig that. Because I have spent hush my dog, sorry. Because I've spent so much time in SBL, I really don't have a firm place in other communities. However, I've recently gotten into is it Votu? Voices of the Underground with Beans?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, you should
This
check
is
check her out. I've got her Discord too. So there's that one. I totally dig the LGBTQ plus community. So I'm in there, and then even like whale shares. I was a part of the whale shares group when Fuzzy was doing. I don't even know if he's still doing it, but Fuzzy was doing his whale take, and you could go and kind of present your project and hopefully get some of it funded. There was drama, but anyway, I'm still involved with them. When I was trying to figure out how to work on this, I was doing a podcast for a minute, and I couldn't figure out how to record. And I knew that those guys over there record. And so even though I hadn't talked to them in months, I popped in and asked Crazy Krista and Steam Power Picks for some help, and they were lovely and totally hooked me up. So I think that's amazing. You know, when you can find a group of people and then not talk to them for a long time and come back in and be like, "Yo, can you help me?" And they totally did. So, mad props over there. But yeah, yeah, there you go.
Now you mentioned build a whale. So sort of segueing a little bit into a little bit of the politics surrounding SteemIt. What's your opinions surrounding bidbots and specifically bidbot abuse?
Oh, that's a good one. The question I keep thinking of as you ask this is, are bid bots a good thing for Steemit, right? And I think the issue is that there are a lot of people on Steemit who aren't here for the good of Steemit, right? They're here for their own personal gains and that kind of thing, which, again, like I said before, I get.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you have, right? On the one hand, you have people who are doing their own thing, using these bid bots to do that, right? What I think the real problem is isn't that those people do it. I think it's the way the rest of us react to it. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, the trending page. Why is the trending page based on how much the post is making? You know what I mean? Can't it be maybe? I hear a lot of people, especially in some of the chat groups I hang out in, talking about why doesn't Stink do this and why don't they fix that? And if they just changed X, Y, and Z, everything would be better.
One
I've been
of
saying,
my favorite suggestions that I've heard for the trending page is rather than how much the post value is, but how many comments are on the post itself.
exactly how, like, I have 51 upvotes, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the last thing that I posted. It's at $1.73. Um, that just means to me that people are liking, appreciating what I'm doing here, but they don't have a big vote. The big vote shouldn't be the focus. I mean, I think that that's a nice thing and everything, but I do think that there should be. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't like that. I don't agree with the way that is. I don't think that the trending page is. I never look at it. I don't know why people look at it. Like, it just doesn't. I'm not interested in what's trending. I'm interested in what I want to see from my friends, or the the tag that I'm looking at. Right. I'm not interested in what other people care about.
Yeah, which
So anyway,
I
yeah.
think catering towards that sort of what you're looking for, definitely I think Steam Plus has done a lot towards their Steam Plus feed feature, which allows you to pick specific keywords or tags or stuff to automatically filter through, or specific users and stuff like that. So I definitely think there have been, whereas Stink doesn't take direct actions, I think third-party sources have been able to pick up where that it has been left off and been able to add to that. One
That's
of
cool.
Yeah, one of the recent additions is also favorites, where you can click on to favorite your certain users, and then it shows on the right of SteamIt your favorites list, and it shows how many new posts they've had since you've last checked out their profile. So I definitely think that's really cool.
That is cool.
But going back to bid bots, I really find it interesting that you're not as harshly against the bidbot abusers, you would, as we would call them, but more on the SteemIt aspect, because most people, like you said, uh, their reaction to it is sometimes very I don't want to say strong, I think is the best word. Their reaction to it is very strong, and I think it's nice that your reaction to it isn't the same way, you know?
Oh, I hear you. Thanks.
Um,
Well,
and I see it, and I see bid bots as a tool. So tools can be used for good or for bad, you know? And
absolutely.
and so when tools are being used for bad, I think it's important to uh, re figure out ways to regulate the tool so that it's being more properly used for good. And I think that's what
Well,
a lot of people are aiming for right now on SteemIt. And there's just
sure.
different approaches towards that.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that's backwards. You know what I mean? I feel like that's kind of, and I know, anyway, I think it's backwards. I think that's like, okay, now we're going to make a law about how to use a bid bot, right? Instead of dealing what the actual issue is. And the actual issue is that people are being accepted into SteemIt who aren't real people. These are a lot of the abuse comes from sock puppets and, people who aren't they just aren't real. They aren't real SteemIt users. So why are we talking about changing these small tools that have been created instead of talking about how do we make sure that the people accepted into SteemIt are real users? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was the Marky Mark, or maybe it was another user that had a post sometime last month that just showed the amount of accounts that Stink approved of that were very obvious non-human accounts because they had whatever title 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 50 accounts of
Exactly.
them, and I was really shocked by the like. I figured it would have like I figured some fall through the cracks here and there, but I was shocked by the sheer amount of accounts that were being created and approved by Stink that were very obviously not real users.
Exactly. I and I don't know why that's okay. Like, we're trying. It's like you're trying to put a band-aid on a hole in a you know what I mean, in a pipe or whatever. Like, it just doesn't work. You have to fix the pipe. You have to fix how these scammers are coming in, not try to regulate them now that they're here. This is supposed to be a decentralized platform. So I get you know, why Stink isn't then, taking a harsh stand against plagiarism and stuff like that. So, okay, so you want it to be decentralized, but you're just opening the floodgates and allowing all of this mass of garbage in. And
Mm-hmm.
it was difficult for me to get I didn't know about um the easy ways to get a post. You know what I mean? To get a blog nowadays. You can pay or do whatever it is, and I didn't know that. So even though I was anti SteamIt, I remember that like my husband had to wait. We had to. Oh, and now I have now I have a blog. Now I have one, but it took a couple of weeks. So I like I don't think people are looking at the bid bot issue, if you will, in the right way.
I definitely find it interesting, and I'll probably have a post coming soon that's going to counter that opinion. But I still, obviously, I highly respect it, and I see where you're coming from on that,
Thanks. Yeah.
And so that's another aspect of SteemIt that I think is important, is that we need to have these discussions, whereas I see a lot of the quote unquote discussions on Steam it just devolving into arguments and massive drama and
Ugh.
large flag wars. And I would think a part of it is that you can't, physically talk to one another, because when you're starting to talk out, everyone starts off calm. Go you don't start off at 100. You start off at 0 and slowly go to 25 and then boost to 100, because that's just how you feel it going. You know what I'm saying? So when we have more of these one-on-one interviews or stuff
Right.
like that, you're more inclined to hear the other person's side and hear the other person's perspective, to
Exactly.
and then from there you'll be able to find some, going back to what I was talking about, the Mark on how successful he has been as a diplomat on SteamIt, if you will, is
Right.
finding some middle ground, some mediation to be able to find that. So
Right.
I'm definitely thankful that you brought in some very interesting perspectives that definitely persuades me in different ways. Um, some of the things that I would disagree on, for example, and I agree on trying to stop the obvious non-users, but there are users out there that also use bid bots to just upvote their trash posts. Um,
Right.
and I think that if you're going on user basis, then you're potentially alienating them from trying to stop what they're doing. You're not trying to get to them to improve the quality of their posts, to actually put effort into posts, to
Right.
not just post placeholders and such. So to me, I feel that some actors on Steam it focus on flagging content, and I feel that flagging content is so. For example, what you were describing lends more towards one of the approaches, which is Bidbots blacklisting users, and that would be blacklisting people that just trash post. And I
Right.
disagree with blacklisting, because blacklisting offers very little ground for reformation for individuals to be able to see it, because then you're just cutting off the service, cutting off the tool from them entirely. And there's, with any tool, when it's used poorly, there's obviously different opinions on how to regulate it. Whether you should say, well, if a person can't handle the tool properly, they shouldn't be allowed to use the tool whatsoever. Or I would say that if a person can't handle a tool properly, they should be trained how to use it properly. And so I think that if you're I sway more towards the side of saying flagging is good. I know that's probably
No,
not a very agreeable opinion upon most people, but I would say that flagging is good, because that means you can start punishing the act, not the person, is the way I would phrase it.
gotcha. Yeah. No, I think flagging is a positive. That's the way. That's the tool we have been given to self-regulate. So I think it's supposed to be used. It's supposed to be, it's I don't know. It's part of the Steam It thing. You flag people that, and I do hope that people aren't flagging just because they don't like what someone says. I don't necessarily think that's the most appropriate way to use a flag, but you know the way Bernie Sanders uses his, and I just think that's what that's for. It's a tool put there on purpose, and he's using it. So kudos, get up on it. I only ever flag somebody if they, when you get the automated, um,
Comments?
yeah, like
Yeah.
That's not that's not cool. You can't just do that.
Like you post a
And I
video of a tragedy and they comment, "Great video,"
uh-huh.
and it's like,
Thanks for sharing. No, no, honey.
mm-hmm.
Or the ones that get on there and go, "Hey, check out my blog." Like, no, that's not how that works either. And I've definitely, oh God, I've definitely taken a minute more often than not to say, "Look, I see you're a 25. That's not the way this shit rolls." You know what I mean? But there are like, no. However, there are some people, and you can just tell that it's automated and there's not even a person behind there making a mistake. This is a widespread vomit all over a million people and their posts in order to try to get a couple of upvotes or whatever. I mean, it's just lame. So, flag away.
Where do you see SteemIt going as? Do you see it developing more as a social media platform, or continuing on this track of being a blogging platform? And where do you want it to see it? Where do you want to see it go?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know. It's funny because it touts itself as being a social media platform, but the most socializing we all do is either on steam.chat or here on Discord, right? So, um I do I think personally I need to get more do more interacting in the comments because I haven't. And I see that a lot of good debate goes back and forth in people's comments sections. So I need personally to get more into that because I do like that part. I like the um I like the ability to have discussions and further discussions on a blog post. So I guess I do hope it continues to grow socially in that kind of way, but I don't see how it really can. Um, so I no, I don't. I'm in a weird place. I know a lot of people who have been here for a long time and think it's gonna die. Right? Steam, it's dead. It's disappearing. It's so fucked up on
Well,
the way it's
obviously,
run.
SteemIt 2.0 is going to kill it.
Right? I don't know. Um, what I honestly, I'm in such a space in my own life right now that I just don't. I This is gonna sound bad. I don't care. I don't care. I've got SPL. I've got Luxax. I've got friends that I will have with or without Steam It. So
Hmm.
I'm having as much fun with it as I possibly can right now. And if it collapses, I'm sure we'll all we're gonna move to EOS or like we're gonna do the next thing.
Yeah, SteemIt
Um,
2.0 on EOS. Dan talks about it a lot in the Telegram and how much he's going to improve SteemIt.
that's awesome. Well, good. Like, um, I do understand that there's a lot of um, things that Stink does and does not do that is just kind of boggles my mind. I'd love to have a sit down with Ned someday because somebody got to tell him some things. But I'm I can't imagine that's going to be something I do. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so being this is so lame. Being the PTA president for so long, I can't tell you how many hundreds of people have come up to me and said, "You know what you should do?" and then told me some great idea when they have absolutely no intention or desire on making this thing happen themselves. So I cannot, in my good conscience, in myself, I cannot say, "Hey, Ned, you know what you should do," without feeling like I have anything to back that up with.
Hmm.
So I don't have anything. I am not a developer. I don't have great ideas about how to fix this stuff. So you know what? I'm just here to do what I can right now and have as much fun with it as possible. I know that's kind of lame, but that's where I'm at.
But returning to the blog versus social media, there's a bit more nuances in it that really would sway the decision. So a lot of the trash posts, if you will, that would be more acceptable in a social media environment. Social media would encourage shorter posts, not longer posts. Social media environment would encourage um, a change in the user interface that different third parties are trying to shift towards, that would sort of emulate, if you would, Facebook a little bit more. So the problem with that is then if you're moving closer towards social media rather than a blogging platform, then all of these arguments we have on trash posts or not putting effort into your posts sort of get tossed out the window, because what you want is people to be quick on it, post short things, treat it as if it's their regular social media, which when you're on social media, the only times you spend more than 5 minutes on something is if you're about to give a long-winded rant.
Right. Well, having you put it like that, then I found an opinion. I definitely hope that this stays as a blogging platform. I remember because um, I was blogging, and then Facebook got really big and Twitter got really big, and it just nobody blogged anymore. Nobody had time to read 3 paragraphs or anything like that because everything's, and I see the validity in Instagram and Facebook. I mean, Facebook sucks, but I get it. I get a nice short pretty picture, a couple of words. I get that too. But getting to really, and this is the interesting part, getting to really know someone, right? To become um a social media kind of situation takes more than just a little plug. And I saw somebody, more than just a few sentences in a picture. Somebody was talking about it. Wait, did I just lose my thought? Um, anyway, okay, here it is. Facebook is for your family, right? These are people you already know, that a picture and a sentence or two is all you really need to get that little kind of update, right? So what's my friend Sam doing today? Oh, there she is. That's so cute. She's hanging out with her horse again or something. That's fine. SteemIt has made it so that I have friends all over the world. Like literally. I could I could globe hop. Um and that you're not going to get at a regular social media platform. It takes more than that. So it takes something, for instance, like the SPL, where we're getting together and we're doing an activity together and getting to know each other through that. That's more um, the social aspect of it. But then once we get to know somebody, then you go back to their SteemIt account and you really start to form a relationship, because now you're investing your time and attention in reading their blogs and commenting on them and having a discussion about whatever it is you're discussing. So I definitely hope SteemIt stays a blogging platform, because the other stuff, the ancillary, right, the outside stuff, that can happen in different ways, like Discord, like the Steam.chat platform.
Mm-hmm. Now, the flip side to that is, and some of the arguments I see from people saying that we should accept that SteemIt is moving towards a social media platform, is user onboarding, or recruit, like reaching out and bringing people onto SteemIt. Not not a whole lot of people want to write long articles. So if you're trying to bring SteemIt, and coming back to what you said about SteemIt dying and whatnot, if you don't want SteemIt to die, you're going to want massive amounts of people joining SteemIt. And what are massive amounts of people going to want? They're going to want the easy, quick.
The easy, yeah.
Exactly. And so
how are you going to balance the expectations of newcomers that are seeing people getting money uh, from posting things and wanting to just post exactly what they're doing on Facebook or exactly what they're doing on Twitter, uh, versus wanting this exactly what you described, this long invested friendships where you truly learn more about someone rather than about what they're doing.
Right. And that's, that's up to then Stink, right? On determining what kind of communities they want SteemIt to have. You know what I mean? If they want just the numbers, then that's the way this whole thing will go. And obviously, like you said, that's what it looks like it's happening now already. They just want the numbers. So okay, so then we'll do that. I guess.
I don't think
And
it's
if it
entirely on Stink, though. I think we, as the people who have been here the longest and have slowly gained more SP. Like, if you have SP, then you have power and you can make decisions on SteemIt with your SP. But also, if you've been here the longest, then you also sort of have, a little bit more respect on the newer comers because you can explain to them exactly how the platform has developed over time and how it's developed for the good and the bad, and be able to explain where we need to stop the bad and why.
right,
So I think in some essence we're a little bit more responsible towards whether or not, and I think blog versus social media, because there are certain areas that Stink is going to have control over, and we won't be able to dictate unless if the witness is all upheed and do a hard fork and say to hell with Stink. But as a community, blog versus social media is one of those things that we can influence because it's this sort of stigma that we want to allow, and sort of backed also by the actual like fiscal part of it of being upvoting, longer posts, refusing to upvote the more social media small
right,
day-to-day things, and potentially flagging, though, that might be a little bit more controversial to say, if you're going to do very short day-to-day posts, we're just going to flag it. Some people are going to support that. Other people are going to say that that's just starting flag wars, and flag wars can get
right.
very gritty. Because to some people, like, if you're doing something short and your expectation is social media, then obviously if it's getting flagged and you're not, like, posting anything offensive or anything like that, then you're going to be very upset about that, which is understandable.
Right. That's why I don't really agree with people flagging things they just don't like. You know what I mean? If it's your picture of your stupid cat and your three sentences about your stupid cat, I mean, I don't need to. That doesn't hurt me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think people get so caught up in like, oh, but I don't like it, and that's not enough, and it's not good enough. Well, get a little less pompous here, people, and let's, you don't. Nobody's telling you you have to spend your time and energy on it. You can just let it go, no problem, and not worry about stuff that you don't agree with. Now, people can.
Unless of course we're talking about you, going back to the bid bots a little bit, using tools to then that to actually harm other people, which is then taking away from the reward pool because your small post with just a few sentences is getting higher upvotes than someone that's given 3 to 7 hours towards a post and gets a fraction of that amount.
Sure, but see, I feel like that statement feels to me like you think, and maybe this is not, a, right, which is cool. But that feels like like you feel like it should be fair, right? And the truth is that there's no fair here. There's no fair in life. Like, yeah, somebody with a shit post who hit the bid bots at the right time got more than I did, even though I worked really hard on my post. And I've done that for almost a year now. Written really intricate, detailed, sourced, right, articles over and over again that get absolutely no funding. um it's not set up to be fair. And so if you just don't like it because it's not fair, well, I suggest you go back to Little League or something where everybody gets a trophy and, like, you know what I mean, like, no, it's not fair. And that's a little naive to assume that it should be. um it just is the way it is. Like, they're working the system. There other people, real people. Now, I'm not talking about the scammer, plagiarist sock puppets. I'm talking about real people who might make a post that's very short, and I don't deem it worthy of the $200 payout it's about to get. But that sucks for me. I didn't play the game the right way. SteemIt is a game above and beyond anything else. And if you don't understand that aspect of it, then you're really just going to flounder, because it's all a game. And the bid bots are part of it. They're a tool that some people use to get ahead in the game.
Yeah, but every game has two teams, and some games have multiple teams. So one of the teams in the Steam It game is people that say that we should have fair, we should have something equitable and fair on Steam It. And as such, we're going to flag it because we have the Steam power to do so, and because what we want out of Steam It is to make it an area that is fair. So why not? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Is like, what you're saying is status quo is realistic towards the real world, and I feel that we shouldn't be complicit to status quo. We should be moving towards a more idealistic, and idealistic would be making it more fair, making it more easier for individuals that put such hard work to get higher payouts than people that give 5 minutes of work.
Right. And I understand that idea, and I would like that to be easy and able to happen, but I don't see how it can happen without a lot of regulation. And in a decentralized platform, regulation is not what you're looking for. If you want to do something different and be like, okay, I am the benevolent dictator and I'm going to make sure that everything is fair, dude, I might sign up, no problem. Like, I dig that whole idea. That's like utopia, kind of. You can one version, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what this is. This isn't, you know, we're going to make rules about the bid bots because we want it to be fair. We're going to make rules about how much you can earn because we want it to be fair. It's like, it's the Wild West out here, and if you don't play your cards just right, then you're gonna get smacked. And or you're gonna play your cards right and game the system and be successful in kind of a gross way. But
But isn't decentralized allowing for self-regulation? And that's exactly what people that are flagging, because the post isn't worth enough. Like, the value of the post isn't equal towards the payout. That is Steam its own decentralized Wild West regulation stepping in, self-regulation, because you're not having Stink do that.
right,
Stink's not stepping in and stopping it. It's
exactly.
it's individual actors that are stepping in, and that's exactly what decentralized would be working for. Because decentralized, if you're an advocate of decentralization, then your argument is we don't need a governing body because we as an entity as ourselves can govern better than a governing body, and that's exactly what we
Right.
see in SteemIt, because the governing body more or less would be stink in the witnesses, and we say no, we don't need them to we don't need government intervention. We can regulate ourselves based off
Right.
the free market, and the free market the free market allows these very rich people to be able to dictate what community standards we want on SteemIt.
Right. No, exactly. That's, the self-regulation is the flagging. And if we don't like what you're doing, then that's how we vote against it. You know what I mean?
So would you say then individuals, and I'll just name drop one. Would you say Grumpy Cat is wrong for flagging people, not BidBots users? That's a whole other thing that we're not going into. But let's say pre-BidBots, BidBots, when Grumpy Cat would just flag trash posts. Would you say that he was wrong in flagging trash posts?
No, because he gets to flag whoever he wants. I did not at all agree with his demand to the BidBot owners. I'm not going to probably be very clear about it because I was on the outside looking in. Um, but the whole idea of him bullying the BidBot owners into only accepting posts that were 3.5 days old, I think is what it was.
Yeah,
Um, who the hell elected that guy, Lord Dictator? Like,
the
where did
free
that come
market,
from? Yeah,
the free
right.
market.
They didn't like it. I mean, the BidBot owners didn't like it, and I disagree wholeheartedly with the 3.5 day um, time limit. So,
Well, the idea is so that you have another 3.5 days for the free market to evaluate posts uh, rather than people buying votes on the last day or two of their payout and then being able to suck away from the reward pool without having any mechanism on SteemIt to evaluate that. So the Grumpy Cat compliance is basically saying we want a self-governing mechanism to be able to evaluate posts and flag them accordingly because we're
right,
seeing vast amount of abuse.
sure, and okay, I get that. However, if you add a nice big fat Build-A-Whale vote at 6 days, then everybody who's voted on your post already gets that curation. Am I wrong?
Curation is very, very minimal, and it's very hard to get like large amount of curation.
Well, okay, but still, I think it's way worse to have a big vote before other people have the opportunity to vote on the post itself. Like, I just think that it's it's
So to put that in
asking for
comparison,
more.
the curation that you're going to get is going to be less than the amount of reward pool that is given towards the person who bought the vote, comparable to the amount that you are no longer getting had the person no longer bought had the person not bought the vote. Does that make sense?
No. What did what?
Be- because if he buys 100 SPD vote, that means 100 SPD or like 50 SPD if you do split, and obviously it gets even more complicated when you do more math, but just keeping it simple, KISS principle, 50 SPD is taken out of the reward pool. Whereas you would have only gotten a fractional amount, you would have only gotten 25% of that. Uh, uh, so you would have only gotten 25 SBD dispersed amongst all of the people that voted before them, and you have that fractional percentage. Does that make sense?
Right.
So if you don't use that 100 SBD, then that's more SBD to be distributed amongst everyone that is pooling from the reward pool versus the 25% that you're getting from the curation.
Okay. I didn't like it. I didn't like it, and I think it sends the wrong message. And here we are. We've got this one person who gets to who.
And the way I see it is, I compare it a lot towards how a lot of the real world is currently regulating things, and that is, people boycotting advertisers on YouTube, or people boycotting Laura Ingram's advertisers because they're tired of what Laura Ingram says, or tired of seeing offensive things on YouTube, and as such, uh, because people on YouTube and viewers of Laura Ingram aren't the consumers, they're the product being sold to advertisers.
Right.
So if you have to go after the consumers, not the products, and so you don't go after the bid bots, you go after the consumers of the bid bots, because they're going to then demand change from the bid bots, and that's sort of what happened. You've seen a lot of bid bots go by the grumpy compliance because their consumers were demanding it, because whether their consumers were demanding it or they realized that if they don't follow that grumpy compliance, they're not going to have a consumer base to begin with. That's when you start seeing change.
Right. Right. Sure.
Anyways, I think we've beat this horse a little bit too dead. Um, and I don't know if I've persuaded you towards any way, or I would say you've persuaded me minimally. I still hold adamantly, so let's agree
It's
to
okay,
disagree.
right?
Yeah,
I have
exactly.
no problem with that.
Exactly. And let's move on a little bit towards something we can both agree a little bit more, and that is SBD pegs. What do you think of SBD pegs? Even though, from what I've talked to, it's going to be very difficult to implement, so we don't really have to worry about it. But what's your thoughts on SBD pegs?
So, like pegging it to $1, that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yes, a stable peg.
I don't get it. Like, why would you want that? I don't understand it, honestly.
To encourage businesses. That's the main argument. The main argument that I've seen is to encourage businesses to join SteemIt, because if you have a volatile currency, it's very difficult to price items or price services uh,
Because it's
and
going
be
to change.
consistent. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But like, what businesses are gonna like businesses to buy Steam it stock?
Not SteemIt stock, but selling products. If, say, you had a blogger who, let's say someone had an Etsy account, they did a lot of crocheting or something, and then they
Right.
brought their crocheting onto SteemIt, and they blogged about what they crocheted and how they enjoyed crocheting, and they wanted to sell something, then that person in the real world would have to do, like, do their due diligence on knowing how much money, how much USD it costs them to be able to crochet a product, and they would have to then sell it to be able to make a profit. Whereas if SBD is volatile, or if we don't have a stable currency on SteemIt, then you can't really say, okay, well, I want to sell this item that I made for $5 for $10, or that this item that I've made for $5 for $7. If you're trying to price it at, I want to sell this at 7 SBD, and then or 5 SBD, and SBD is worth $3 one day, but the next day it's worth $2, and all of a sudden,
I getcha.
exactly.
Okay. Well, I still like the idea of it changing. Um, I guess I'm just optimistic, and it's man, when we had that pump last year, right at the end of the year, that
Yeah,
was exciting. Like that was,
10
it's
SBD was
telling
definitely. It was nice being able to make more than minimum wage on SteamIt.
right, right. It was awesome, and so I like that idea. That there's no ceiling. So I think with the peg, you're just kind of yes, it's more consistent, and maybe if I was trying to make steam it my income and really kind of um, count on it. I guess I would like the idea of a peg better, but I don't. So I'm much more excited about the possibilities of an unpegged currency.
Yeah, and I agree. Having an unpegged currency, uh, you nailed the description perfectly. It's excitement because it goes up, and then you get you get very happy when it goes up.
It was really fun. We're
And when it
like
goes down, you're not
laughing
like,
while you were selling, and like, I mean, it's exciting.
yeah, exactly. And when it goes down, uh, unless if it goes so down that you're starting to get deterred from the platform, when it goes down, then you're not really losing anything. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. Because it's still, I mean, I haven't invested any like fiat currency into SteemIt. So all of this, I mean, maybe $30, I think my husband put in initially, but that's nothing. Everything I have on here, I've created myself with my work and my, and so that's exciting if it can go up to $5 in SBD. That was really fun. So I don't know. Yeah.
All right. And I guess the final topic is what do you see the role of trying to be socially aware on SteamIt?
That's a good one too. I I don't I don't mm, I don't know that I don't feel like um Steam It as a whole needs to focus on being more socially aware. I definitely am a part of different groups who are socially aware and take that kind of on and do their good work there. Um, that's once again, that's just not what I'm here for, and so I tend to like you know how the talk goes on a poker table, and I'm not interested in policing that at this point, not here.
Okay.
So you
Uh,
know,
on the counter, to quote from flagging, flagging your post can remove rewards and make this material less visible. Some common reasons to flag include hate speech and internet trolling. Do you agree that is a legitimate reason to flag? So,
absolutely.
cool. So now we
Well,
have one side of the spectrum where you say absolutely we should flag hate speech. Now let's try walk it closer towards the other side of the spectrum, which you said is this isn't the platform to try police. Where would that middle ground be for you, where you would say where would the line in the sand be for you, where you would say this is no longer flag worthy? When it's something that is insensitive.
Well, I think that it all really hangs in that word, insensitive. So you can be insensitive, you can have, and part of what I do when I talk to people that have very, very different opinions than I do is I want to hear it. You know what I mean? I don't understand it, and therefore I need to learn. Is kind of my goal when I listen to people talk about this. So, insensitivity is one thing, being actually damaging and hurtful, like I'm trying to hurt you now with my words, is a um, different stage, right? So, I can use fags in like a not kind way. I can talk about people being gay without being politically aware of how detrimental that is. But if I'm going to sit here and call you personally, whoever that is, a fag, and I'm going to use that language then in order for the to purposely hurt you, that's where I draw the line. Um, if you're going to just throw words around, I refuse to give, and I'm a lucky person. I'm a white CIS woman. I get plenty of sexist talk around me, but I don't have too many triggers in that way. So it's easy for me to let it slide, whereas other people aren't. But that's my line is when what someone is saying is is purposely said to hurt someone else, that's where I draw my line.
Uh, that sounds reasonable. I definitely agree with you that you know, intent versus impact. I tend to more swing a little bit closer towards the impact side of things and trying to evaluate how things have been impacted on others. And so I think if something is if something is a full honest accident without an awareness of the context behind something, then I tend to not be as harsh. But if it's
Right.
something that is, if you can understand the content, so things like, saying fag or saying offensive things, to me, I tend to say you should know that that is offensive.
Right.
And if you, and so, like, because there's things that you don't know is offensive, uh, that is insensible, and I feel it's okay for you not to. So I think, like, and a lot of that is just more the spread of education, and I think there's a lot of different, like, smaller layers of transphobia out there that I tend
Sure.
to be more tolerant around, just because of the level of uneducation, the lack of education surrounding that type of topic is
Right.
more prevalent, because the education for the topic hasn't grown as much, and so I tend to more try and be less lectury during those times and more conversational. But
Sure.
where I draw the line is usually if you understand the context behind the diction that you use, then you should be able to understand that there's better diction out there. And to me, I think it's I think it's a part of laziness, in my opinion, because I believe that there's higher creativity that you can put into an insult or a joke or any of those things that wouldn't require these insensitive usage, these loaded languages. You could very easily be a lot more creative with what you're saying and not be as insensitive. And so, like, one of the examples I turn to is one of my coworkers. He came. I checked him out, and uh, he was joking with another coworker who is beside me, and he then looked to me and asked, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, miserable, but thanks for asking." And then he asked, "Why are you miserable?" And he said, "I don't know. I'm just disgusted with your existence." Super harsh. And he later talked to me, and he was like, "Wow, that was like that really affected me." And I was like, "Yeah, exactly. It was creative. It was different. You haven't heard that before, have you?" And so to me, that's where I go. And obviously, I told him that I was joking, and he didn't take much offense to it. But
Right.
that's where, if you're using loaded language, I think you're you're just falling back to an easy thing. Like, you could be a lot more creative with your things and not be offensive. And I think if you can be creative and impactful without being offensive or insensible, then you're a better person, not on the social aware aspect, but on the uh, I guess, intellect aspect. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, and I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. There is no need. Oh my, there's just no need to use some of these words. Asshole works almost universally. You know what I mean? You don't
Hmm.
have to say gay or pussy or any of these other words that are retarded, or there's just no need for it.
That's
However,
that word particularly really going after special needs communities really impacts me a lot, and I don't know why it does. I guess I just
right,
grew up in an environment where like that is just an absolute no go, even for your like edgy teen, like your edgy people.
yeah,
If you're trying to be edgy, you still have like some standards, and
absolutely,
and it really surprised me. Talking to some of the more international people on SteemIt and seeing them use that kind of language or
right,
seeing their opinions surrounding that language, it really shocked me that people were more susceptible to using that kind of language because to me it was completely foreign. You just would never say that.
right, right. Yeah, it's interesting. Um, However, I do think that, especially in a space like this, um, we can get so caught up in these words, right? And people right now, especially white men in America, to be completely honest, are really, really feeling, and this is just an like a blanket of assumption, okay? Because not every white man that I talk to is like this. However, the general feel that I'm getting, because of the climate of today, which is a good thing, white men specifically are feeling very um uh dude, they're feeling like people of color. They're feeling less than simply for their sexual identity and the color of their skin. And this is a place that white men are not used to being in, right? So it's very uncomfortable for them. And in this spot, Steam It specifically, I have seen more of this lashing out, right? Of fuck it, I hate feminists and I'm going to use gay every other word because I'm so tired of being regulated. So for me, in that context, it's very easy for me to let it slide. I don't need to worry about you using an anti-woman slur in your language. What I want is to understand what you mean underneath that, and help us come to an understanding that's deeper than the inflammatory language you're choosing to learn or to use. You know what I mean? So it's nitpicking on some level. Like, yes, we definitely are as a society moving towards a much more understanding and love everybody and let people do their own thing society. And right now is a very kind of um it's a difficult time, and I don't feel like I need to come down on people for the words that they're choosing to use to express themselves. I want, like, some of the people that I have had conversations with have such drastically different upbringings and opinions and all of the things that if I was so worried about the specific words that they use, there would never be a point where they could understand my point of view, why I'm a feminist, why I think equal rights for um, trans people are so important. We wouldn't have been able to get to the deeper underlying situations if I was so caught up in the words, the verbiage that they use. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's where I am right now, and I feel it's a struggle for me because I feel on a large level like a hypocrite, because I would never in my AFK life, I would never allow someone to use the kind of language that I listen to on a daily basis, because I understand how hurtful it can be to other people. At the same time, I feel like I'm in a really interesting position to be able to let those kind of words go and get to the real issues at hand, which are human rights issues.
Hmm.
So that's my focus.
I totally understand that, and I have to say that I feel the same. I feel a lot more, um, I guess not guilty is the word, but a lot more apprehensible about myself is because I take it a step further, uh, and when I'm around certain communities or certain people, uh, I guess I just know that I'm not going to be able to get to anywhere with them, and I just give up and not only tolerate but also participate in. And I think that's
Right.
I hate myself whenever I use insensible language within
Right.
communities that I'm in. But I also feel like you sort of have to be able, like, I feel like this is the worst way to phrase it, but to fit in with them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Because if you're not with them, then on some level you're against them.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And you're
how do
just
you
being
manage that?
complicit, and you know that being complicit is bad, and you don't want to, but you pick your hills to die on, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And where is that? And what's our real um oh my god, my words are starting to fail me. But what's our responsibility in those situations? You know what I mean? Is it and it depends on where I am and what I'm doing. If I'm alone, quote unquote, one-on-one talking to someone, then I definitely am much more willing to let words slide and, like you said, use words that I would normally find um inappropriate or hurtful, um in order to get to the underneath part. But how to deal with, just like you said, how to deal with that kind of, what's my obligation here, what is it that I really want to do in this space at this moment. It's a juggling act. It's hard.
Yeah. Going a little bit broader, less about SteemIt, but more about political theory. What's your opinion on like being social justice, uh, with in regards to the Overton window aspect? Um, so
The
like
what?
Overton window. So basically, it's like a political theory that most political scientists accept as true, in which it basically says to be able to push change, you want sort of you have you have two key influencers in change. You have radicals and you have moderates, and you have individuals within radicals that are truly radical for because they adamantly believe in something, but then there's also like on a deeper level, on a political science level, you have people being radical that don't actually believe in the radicalism, but people that are radical for the sake of radical, because well, the more radical you are, the more sensible you make the moderates appear to be.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So the idea is we're going to be as social justice warrior-y as possible. Like, I like to think of it as an analogy as a football. You want to punt that ball as far down as the field as possible so that when the moderates pick up the ball, there's a or when their side picks up the ball, your moderates have a longer way to be able to defend their position, uh,
Right.
because you're making them seem more reasonable. And uh, the best like real case scenario that I've ever seen on this was studying into how civil rights came along and how you had a balance between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And basically, political scientists say that the only reason why Martin Luther King was ever able to walk inside the White House, yet alone discuss with the president and discuss policy and how to enact policy, is because you had Malcolm X out there being arguably domestic terrorist, or others would just say harshly radical.
Inflammatory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so
Well,
people saw Martin Luther King as the reasonable person on the
right.
field.
Well, and in the African history classes that I took, um, my professors were very clear on how they would say that in a different way. Martin Luther King was the black man that was uh, oh god, that was acceptable. You know what I mean? He wasn't in there shouting from the rooftops. He wasn't in there being inflammatory. He was the good Negro, right? And how disappointed so much of the black um, population in that time and space, how disappointed they were that that was the man getting getting the word out, that it wasn't instead um, the more in your face, this isn't okay, like, and it needs to be changed thing. He was the good Negro. He's like, who's the, I'm gonna say the wrong, Jackie, the good Negro that they allowed to be on a baseball team because
Oh,
he
Jackie
was on the
Robinson?
Jackie Robinson. Sorry, God, I'm tired. But yeah, and then the problems that are inherent in all of that, like, yes, he is more moderate and more able to be listened to by the white people. But is that really what we needed at the time? So it is. It's a fascinating discussion, honestly, about what course we should be on, what you personally and I ought to do in order to help the most people. And I don't think I think that's why I think discussions like this are really important because fuck if I know, man. Like, I just want it to be better, and I want everybody to be able to get along. And can't we all just play poker? I don't even know. Like, let's just have fun. But there's so much out there that is hurtful and has been hurtful, and just needs to be dealt with. So finding the right way and the right time and how to, and oh my God, it's important to think about.
Absolutely. Anyways, you have mentioned
Anyways,
that you are tired. We are running on an hour and a half here. It's been one fantastic interview, and definitely I would not have any other person I would want as my first
oh,
interviewee,
thanks,
uh,
JP.
of course. So, is there any closing topics you want to discuss?
No, I'm good. But anytime you want to do this again, let me know. This is always fun to talk to you.
Alrighty. Any closing messages? You want to do plugs again?
Can we all just get along and play poker? I think that's
That's the
that's
unofficial
all I got.
slogan of SPL now. Can't we just get along and play poker?
Just get along and play some poker. Come on, it's fun. Nah, I think this is all good, JP. I can't wait to see what you do with it. It'll be cool.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for being on, and
Welcome.
I hope I hope our listeners post recording will enjoy this. Thank you for joining us on
Absolutely.
insert title interviews. Uh,
Ah,
please
awesome.
comment. Please follow SPL. Please support SPL. Link in the description on all the things that we've had
All the
discussed at the
things.
beginning, and comment your titles that you want this to become.
Love it.